Commander Worf wants Jadzia Dax to present her Dach Tang to General Martok. Alexander Rashenko suddenly wants to be a warrior, and Ziyal's paintings remind Major Kira of Vedic Topek's early work. But Dukat says they're similar in style to Nampart Malor, the founder of Valanin School on Cardassia. Hey,
well, that's a lot.
Welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Way to get that out. All right.
It's kind of like when you're reading stuff and don't even know what you're saying anymore. I'm like, what are all these words of the Valanin School on Cardassia?
And those are the hardest things to say when you're actually filming. Yeah. Because you'll remember the other stuff, oh, what's his name's coming here. You know that the general thing, I have to say that this person is coming from here, going there. It's just the problem is those, like, you don't know, that place doesn't exist. Yeah. And it's a tongue twister of words.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be in a different language. And we'll get to everything in just a second, but I do want to point out, shout out to LeVar Burton, because he is the guy in my mind above everybody that was able to deliver lines that made no freaking sense as if they did make sense. I mean, Star Trek is famous for its technobabble, its Treknobabble.
Yes.
But of everybody I've ever seen, he was the one that would say these things where on paper it's nonsense, but he would just deliver them in a way that he just believed every word he was saying, and it just slid right through and felt so natural. So big shout out to him for that, because that is the hardest thing to do.
No, I'm not aware that he was so good at that, but I do know that is the biggest challenge for any actor when they're doing these episodes. It's saying something that you either have no real conceptualization of, whether it's some scientific data, and you just don't know about peptide nucleosyphus surfaces or whatever it is.
That's another Next Generation episode. There's a neuropeptide cake with mint frosting.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
so
good. Very good.
You just, you're like, peptides. I know I studied peptides. I just don't know what the hell are peptides. So yeah. And then there's just the language of trying to, say another country's school of da-da-da-da and all this, it's not easy. And it's a skill all to itself to be able to say it as if you are familiar and comfortable with it, as if it's something that you always have. Like, hey, you didn't know the Chicago Bulls.
It's not right. It's not just memorizing lines. It's delivering these things that, like, with meaning behind them. Kind of like when they're speaking Klingon, and they can't just say the words in a gruff manner. They have to say them as if they know the meaning behind them. Right. But yeah, Cirroc, man, good knowledge without even being aware of it, saying peptides when we're talking about LeVar Burton. And I think Worf, by the way, was the one that said, with mint frosting. It's just too funny.
It's just an intuition for me. I've been around it too long, I guess.
So everybody at home, we're going to get this ship on track here. It is happy time. This is the best time of the week for us, hopefully for you as well. So sit back and enjoy. This is Deep Space Nine's Season 6, Episode 3, you might have guessed, Sons and Daughters, written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. Lots to talk about with those two, by the way. Directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. October 13th, 1997. I just kind of wanted to be like one of those newscasters. They're like, yeah, we're out here in Austin, Texas, and we've got a tractor pull with Jesus Salvador Trevino. And you're like, what the heck? They kind of show off their skills. Anyway, how are you today, by the way?
I'm doing good. I am doing good. This season is really exciting. So it's a pleasure to start to watch these episodes. Every time I sit down and kind of prep myself for what's about to come, I know that I'm going to get some good television. So it's really a treat right now at this point.
Absolutely. We do want to say very quickly, if you are enjoying this as much as we are, please consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/the7th-rule. Look us up, find us on social media, like the videos, share them, comment, and give us 5 stars. But check us out on Patreon. Also on spring.com, you can check out all of our merchandise. Check it out. See if you want to support, even if you want to just throw $1 our way just to say, hey, I like you guys and I like what you're doing. I want to show you some support. And speaking of which, check out this awesome shirt that I'm wearing right now.
All right.
That design is called the Sisko Kid. It is made by Cirroc's sister, and you can find it on AbyssinianKiosk.com. She's got tons of really cool stuff, some Ethiopian designs and some Star Trek related stuff. Lots of really cool, awesome things. And a lot of people are getting her things and they love it. That link is in the description box below, just like our Patreon link is also in the description box below. It's party time. Let's talk about this episode.
Yeah. So I think I remember you mentioning, or you maybe have to refresh my memory, but I heard about Worf having a kid. I don't know where I heard it from before. Probably. So, and I didn't know the name of this kid up until this episode.
Alexander.
But yeah, can you give me a little refresher course on that?
Yeah, so Alexander is a whiny. No, I'm just kidding. Well, kind of. He was in like the first few seasons of Next Generation. He had a few episodes. He was so tiny. There was this tiny toddler in Klingon makeup, and it was halfway weird and halfway adorable. Because especially standing next to Worf, who's a giant, and he was so small. And Deanna Troi, really liked him and kind of took care of him. Worf tried to take care of him because his mother, Kalar, who's half Klingon and half human, she died. So Worf was going to take care of him for a bit, but they butted heads.
So his mother was half Klingon and half human.
Yeah, so he's a quarter human. And so the only time Worf in history has ever met his match was against his 5-year-old son. He just didn't know what to do with the guy. So the kid ended up being raised by his grandparents, or his adoptive grandparents, the people that adopted Worf, the Rashenkos. So they live out in Russia, and that's where Worf was raised, out in Russia. And so Alexander then grew up in Russia. So presumably, if the math is correct, kind of like Ziyal, which is like Ziyal, we saw her just a couple seasons ago and she was 13. So I guess she's like 15 or 16 now, but she looks 30. Same thing with Alexander. Mathematically speaking, he should be something like 15 years old, but maybe Cardassians and Klingons grow up faster. So that's kind of how you can work it out in your mind, is to say, okay, they look older than they are because they're a different alien species. They can become adults at 12 if they want. Who knows? So that's the story there. And this is the first time we've seen him, obviously, on Deep Space Nine. And they used a different actor as well, presumably because the actor that they had probably at the time looked like a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and they needed somebody different, kind of like where they changed actresses for Ziyal twice. This is the third actress playing Ziyal because they needed somebody that was older rather than somebody that looked 13 or 15 or whatever.
Right. Okay. That's good enough backstory for me, because I didn't understand. And that, so the part where where Worf says to, talks about him not showing fighting skills and, not having a warrior spirit. That's all backstory that's never been seen before, right? That was all.
Yeah, they did kind of, and it's been a long time since I've watched The Next Generation. Right now, the Trekkies are very angry with me for saying that. I do love The Next Generation. That's kind of like 1A and 1B for me as far as Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. But Worf did try to teach the kid to be a warrior, this little 4-year-old or 5-year-old, he's like trying to teach him how to scowl and be tough. And the kid just wasn't a fighter. I think the kid did end up getting into like a fight at school or something at one point, but they have jostled a bit about this, about Worf teaching him to be a warrior, a Klingon,
Okay. Well, you answered a lot of questions for me, because I wanted to know how, when he had that backstory about him. I was like, did I miss something? Or I know they didn't have on this show.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, and the other thing was you answered the question obviously, but I was like, Rashenko, who is this guy? A Russian? Who let the Russian guy in the on the station on the ship? But now that you let me know that he is Russian and was raised by this Russian family, that makes a whole lot of sense. Um, Alexander Rashenko, I swear he sounds like a tennis player.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
or a boxer or a tennis player. Lepchenko.
Oh no, you're thinking of the MMA fighter. There's a really good MMA fighter. Well, there's also a boxer, similar name. There's an MMA fighter who was just like the best 5-8 years ago with a similar name. Too bad we can't remember Russian names.
Well, I know there's a Lepchenko. I think he's a boxer who's like a really good boxer. I don't know his first name, but or Lomachenko. Anyways, it's
you got it.
Traditional name.
Lomachenko, Vasily Lomachenko, and there's also a Varvara Lepchenko. And there's a lot of those.
Yeah. No, it's a very traditional name. I mean, sounding name.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in a Russian neighborhood in West Hollywood, so I grew up around a lot of Russians, and they taught me how to play chess, and were really nice to me. So I know them very personally, and so that was the first thought in my mind. I was like, hey, who's this Russian Klingon dude that just showed up? Says he's got no house,
But Cirroc, I would love to play you in chess sometime. This will be fun. One of these days we'll have to play a game of chess. Should be a good time.
Right.
But so Alexander pops in, and if you're watching this for the first time, like back in the 90s, you're like, what? Worf's kid, because we knew about, he was maybe in 3 to 6 episodes or something like that. He was a known character that was a source of storyline for Worf in the first half of Next Generation. But sorry, you were going to say something?
No, the only thing I was going to highlight a couple of things. Number one, I was going to say that, first of all, the episode is written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. And so we know that this is a submitted episode, right? That was not made in-house by...
Well, these two gentlemen, I looked them up because I remember looking them up before. They do have a few story buys, which means maybe they kind of pitched but at least later on, they both became executive story editor. So after this, they have like 25 or 30 executive story editor credits. So I think maybe they became executive story editor for the entirety of season 7, or like half of season 6 and all of season 7. And before that, they had a few credits. We looked them up before because they had, and then they also went on to write and produce for Battlestar Galactica, for CSI, sci-fi show Falling Skies with Doug Jones, also The Strain, which I think Doug Jones was also in, and now For All Mankind, which is like the big one with Ronald D. Moore. So this is they're definitely a duo that has done a ton of cool sci-fi stuff together. And real quick, the episodes that they see, story by they got for Rules of Engagement. I think that was like season 2, and teleplay by they did The Assignment, and they also did Business as Usual, and now Sons and Daughters. So that's like their 4th one. But then after that, they started going into story editor and executive story editor. So it really picked up for them.
Right. So I would assume that means that they're on the lot at that point, and they're now full-time engaged in each script as opposed to just submitting and pitching.
Right.
So just wanted to highlight that because I think it's just evident of how people are able to grow in the show, as far as at least behind the camera, we see a lot of growth. When we talked to Robert Wolf, and he talked about his maturation as a writer, and towards the end here at the 5th season, when he decided to go on because he had other opportunities that were available to him as far as being a showrunner and writing his own feature film. So, just the opportunity for these different writers, as we see their careers start to bud and grow, and it's just an interesting thing to kind of observe as far as the growth in storytelling for DS9.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I thought Robert was also an executive story editor in some episodes. Yep, I'm looking it up right now. He was an executive story editor for multiple seasons, it looks like. So his leaving after the 5th season may have opened that door. There's certainly something there, to where after 5 seasons he left and these guys kind of took over. It seems like midway through the 5th season, or midway through the 6th season, or for just the entirety of the 7th season. But
yeah,
this episode,
and then just one more thing is, clearly Ron Moore likes working with them because they've done several things subsequently with Ron Moore. So that's another thing to just point out.
Battlestar Galactica and For All Mankind, 2 very big sci-fi shows that are Ronald D. Moore's amazing productions.
Masterpiece. Yep.
And this episode, there were some moments that I thought felt so Star Trek. And I even put that in my notes. I said, oh, that is so Star Trek. So clearly, even though this was just like their 3rd episode writing for Star Trek, they definitely understood the voice. They definitely got it.
What were some of those moments?
Well, for example, where I put it in my notes towards the end was, this is something that we see all the time in Star Trek. And it gets me every time. I love it. Is you have the bad guy Klingon. I mean, the jerk Klingon. What was his name? Ch'Targ, I think. Yeah,
who was very, very excellently played. I don't know the actor's name that played him, but I thought he was
Zeller.
I liked him because he got under. He had a little bit of likability to him, where you kind of liked him, and then he kind of like he's a bully. So I enjoyed the way he played that character, Sam Zeller. Shout out to Sam.
Yeah. So the moment that was so Star Trek to me is he's picking on the kid. Then he kind of razzes him a little bit, and we can talk a bit more about that, of course. But when Alexander says, hey, let me go, I can fix the leak. There's a plasma leak. He says, I can seal the leak. And Worf is just like, I don't know, man, it's dangerous for you. And I don't know if I can trust you. He's thinking that. And Ch'Targ, or whatever, is his name really Ch'Targ? Yeah, Ch'Targ. He says, I will go with him. He'll need 2 people. And that is such a Star Trek moment, which is like the guy that's kind of picking on him, the guy that kind of needs to be proven to. He says, he takes it upon himself to say, I'll take care of him. I'll take care of it. Let me put him under my wing, And that's such a Star Trek moment. It's one of those moments when you go like, it restores your faith in humanity, or in Klingons, where you say, see, even the ones that are tough, or even the ones that are bad can surprise you and can say, hey, this kid ain't so bad. I got your back, and it's a great moment, and it's just extremely Star Trek to me.
No, that's an interesting, I mean, I noticed that moment too. And I did like it. I like the fact that he kind of, he's like, despite all our differences, despite the fact I was going to kill you yesterday or earlier today.
Yeah.
I know that this job can't be done just by you. And I think that's, kind of what you're saying about the Star Trek moment of things, is that the need for whatever it is that whatever the need is, how much people are willing to sacrifice, whether it's their ego, their life, their job. Maybe they'll get, court-martialed or whatever. They're willing to put so much on the line because of how great or whatever that need is that needs to be filled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll go into the warp core and I'll expose myself to the radiation because I know if I don't, then we're all going to die. Or that guy, he can't do it alone. He needs somebody else to go with him, even though I might not come back. So I'll go with him. And there's these really good moments of courage and selflessness, I think, that you're talking about is the Star Trek moment. I think it's a great thing to identify.
And Klingons tend to do those particular types of Star Trek things the best, which is about honor, which is about like whatever is best for the Empire, whatever, like puts aside the ego, puts aside everything else. And he's just like, yeah, I know we're just about to kill each other, but I got your back on this. Martok, it does that with Worf. They were at odds at first. Gowron, when he first shows up to Worf, whatever it was, 2 seasons ago, and he's like, Worf, there are some people that call you a traitor and say that you're this or that. And he goes, I assure you, I'm not one of them, or something goofy like that, And Klingons tend to always have that moment where they're like, they have these blood feuds and these age-old battles to the death, but they're also like, hey, as long as you're a warrior and I'm a warrior, there's always that respect there, and I'm always going to work with you. And they are, in a way, they're the most stubborn about fighting to the death, but they're also the most forgiving in that they don't let ego get in the way. They're just like, hey, I don't care if you're my mortal enemy. If it's more honorable to not kill you and to work with you, I will choose the side of honor. And it's just always an interesting, they're just such a rich culture that the writers of Star Trek have created. It's very nuanced.
Yeah. And when the episode is called Sons and Daughters, but I was thinking it could have been called Bad Dads.
Yes. A+, excellent knowledge. Excellent knowledge. Bad Dads, man. I love it.
Yeah. Our Bad Dad's gone good, because there's a moment, I guess they have that redemption where they do kind of, this is their step up to the plate and kind of redeem yourself for the bad dad that you have been. I think it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. Kind of like a redemption story for the bad dads in a way. That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, because that's another thing that's very Star Trek, because they have the A plot and the B plot that both either have almost the exact same theme or have themes that are in the similar realm to each other, and that's why their titles usually have meaning to both plots,
Yeah. And the other aspect of this, which I didn't really see it right away while I was watching it, but as we're discussing it now in this context, and specifically when you mentioned Alexander Rashenko's mom being half Klingon and half human, this is also a story of biracial children, essentially, right? Because we have Ziyal being a biracial child, and we have Alexander Rashenko being a biracial child,
exactly,
and them having to, they have this kind of trying to find their identity, trying to see where they fit, where they belong. You're not Klingon enough for the Klingons, and you're not human enough for the humans. And that's something that a lot of biracial people can identify with, as far as finding themselves on the outside of two races as opposed to on the inside.
And they don't, they're supposed to have 2 races, but instead they get 0. They're kind of like not 100%
right.
on one side of the fence or the other as far as how they are accepted. We got to take our quick break, but let's talk more about this, because I think this really is the heart of this one. This is really good stuff. We'll be right back on the 7th rule, so stick around. This is good stuff.